Hello Flosstube, I'm back for part 2 of video number 35, which is my No New Starts 2021 WIP Parade. This one probably won't be as long as the other one just because I just grabbed a disproportionate number of pieces in the first one. So hopefully this won't take quite as long, but I wanted to show you the rest of my WIPs. They're really in no particular order. I started out with the best intentions of scheduling pieces to work on throughout the year at certain times. I even set up a calendar, but then I started feeling the pull to stitch on things I wanted to stitch on as opposed to things that the calendar said I needed to stitch on. So yeah, that lasted about a hot second. I admire people who can stitch to a schedule or do a rotation, because to me I kind of have to fly by the seat of my pants. Let me turn on the light in the kitchen just to see if that helps. It's the only light that I didn't, there we go. It's the only light that I didn't turn back on. But I admire people who do a rotation or stick to a schedule, because I'm almost physically incapable of being that organized. A little chaotic clutter is good for me, keeps me going. So we'll just jump right in. This is one, in the previous video I had mentioned Clouds Factory. This is one that I'm stitching for a friend of mine who absolutely is the biggest Disney aficionado I have ever known. She has gone to Disney so much that when she stays in certain places, she's practically on a first name basis with everyone who works there. I think her husband has run in the marathon that they have every spring for at least a few times. Just crazy fanatical Disney person. So this is the Disney Alphabet Sampler, which is cute. I would stitch this for a kid who was really into Disney too, but Lori is the biggest Disney aficionado I've ever met. I'm stitching this on 14 count confetti Ada from Picture This Plus. And I've gotten the first 4 done. Now the only change I made was I didn't put Cinderella's necklace on because it looked really weird and kind of creepy. I just couldn't unsee the way it looked. It almost looked like it was some kind of a creepy mouth or something. So I restitched her and didn't put the necklace in. But the one there that I've started is Prince Eric. It's a melange of good guys and bad guys, because it's Tiana and Snow White and Rapunzel, and then it's Iago and Lady Tremaine and Yzma. So it's kind of a mix of the good guys and bad guys. Now they do have some that are just villains and some that are just good guys. But anyway, so she will eventually get this from me. I can't remember, when did I start that? I didn't write it down, did I? No, I just wrote down that it was 14 by 17 with 2-inch borders all the way around. I am trying with newer pieces to be better about writing down when I start them, just for my general knowledge. I mean, it's not like you have to know that, but I just kind of like to know when I started something, so I know how long I dawdled on it, basically. This one I started back in 2018, I think, if I remember correctly. So that's that. Now this one is one of my older WIPs that I started in 2016 as a tribute to our football trip to Hawaii. I cannot show her because I don't have a cover page, but she is Leilani the Hula Girl, which is a Nora Corbett design. It was one of Nora Corbett's free patterns. I believe, yeah, I think Leilani is a free pattern. I think you can still pick it up online, but that's as far as I've gotten with her. And this is a 32 count. This is the other part of the scrap of 32 count jazz even weave that I'm doing the Coffee Drinker's Confession on. So she'll be pretty. I actually really, the first time I ever used beads in a cross stitch, I really got addicted to it because it just gives this little bit of pop to it. So a lot of her skirt is bugle beads and things, so that's going to be really pretty. a lot of teal and green. So that's going to be really pretty. I just need to put some more time in on her. She's one I haven't really given a lot of time to. This one is probably controversial, but I really don't care. It's the Stony Creek Gadsden flag. Pretty straightforward stitching. I just haven't worked on it much. I can't remember where this fabric came from. Did I mark this with an up or a down arrow? I'm trying to remember. I think a down arrow. I try to mark all my pieces showing me where down is, so that if it's a piece like this where it's not going to look like anything until you get a significant amount of work put into it, you still know which end is up. I mean, some patterns you can tell right away, but like this one, this is the center coil of the snake. So I started working my way up the snake, but if I didn't mark the fabric, I wouldn't know. And speaking of fabric, I have no idea where this fabric came from. It is a 32 count linen. Of course, I needed yellow fabric, so that's all that it mattered, was that it was yellow. So I'm not entirely sure where that came from, but this one I was working on a couple weeks ago. I think I'm going to put an emphasis on my patriotic stitching over the summer, starting with Memorial Day. I'll probably try to do a lot of work on my patriotic stitching. This one, let's see, this is one of my older project bags. Which one? KSA stuff. Oh yes, this is one. I actually started this for someone else, but I'm going to give it to a different friend of mine now. No offense to the first person I started it for, but I started this one for someone else who owns a subsidiary of their business in downtown Chicago, and it's been closed since the pandemic and all the violence in Chicago. So I think I'll do something else for them when they're able to reopen. But this is for a friend of mine who grew up in Chicago. And it's Pretty Little Chicago by Satsuma Street. And Chicago actually holds a soft spot in my heart. I've never actually been there, but the Crane Communication Building, which is the big diamond flat top building with the glass, excuse me, with the diamond panels in the roof, that has not always been the Crane Communication Building. It was Smurfit Stone in global headquarters back in the day, which was one of the many names of the company my dad worked for when I was growing up. It started as Continental Can. It eventually became Smurfit Stone. Well, no, actually, it was Continental Can when I was little, like too little to remember it actually being called that. Then it was Stone Container, which was probably when I was in middle school. Then it went to Smurfit Stone. Then it became Jefferson Smurfit. And then it eventually, by the time he retired, became Rock 10. But for most of my formative years, it was some variation of Stone Container. And this was the Stone Container, Smurfit Stone. Because Smurfit was an Irish company that partially bought out Stone Container. So it was Stone Container, Smurfit Stone, then Jefferson Smurfit, and then I think the last incarnation of it was Rock 10, like 10 as in Tennessee. But, yeah. So that will always be Smurfit Stone to me, and not the Crane Communications Tower. And my dad actually got to go there. He got a chairman's award one time, and I think it was the first time my mother had ever been on a plane, and they flew to O'Hare and went to Chicago for the awards ceremony. So my dad's been to Chicago, but I haven't. But hey, there's always a first time for everything, right? If we can actually get our lives back and travel again. This is all I've gotten done. What fabric is this? Excuse me. Let's see. Oh, I started this on August 11th of last year on 28 count used ear Lugana from Seraphim Fabrics. I mentioned them before. They're the ones in Palmer, and I love their fabrics, and I love being able to support a local artisan with my fabric choices. So that's just a little part of the cloud. I was surprised I got to keep this one in my album because I definitely didn't have 200 stitches, but I definitely put at least 2 hours in because I started it, switched fabrics, started it again, frogged it. So this is technically the third start. So there was definitely 2 hours worth of work in it. So yeah, that one's going to be for Fran. Eventually, I mean, not anytime soon, because as you see, I didn't have much of that started. But I like Satsuma Street's patterns. I mean, she's got pretty little Honolulu, pretty little Washington, D.C. I mean, you know, you can pretty much find a little town that's going to work for you with her patterns. They're cute. This one is one of my older WIPs, but this one is fun. First of all, I love the project bag. It's so appropriate to the piece. This was one of the first project bags I think I ever bought. This is from So Much to Love, which is where most of mine that aren't the Garon totem bags come from. But this is the perfect bag for this because this is the only cross stitch. Like if anything comes up in the challenges and whatnot during No New Starts regarding music, I'll be set. Because this one is Ink Circles 99, which, yes, you can cross stitch 99 bottles of beer on a wall and get the song stuck in your head, which I hate to admit, every time I stitch on this, somehow that song worms its way into my head. It's all craft beers and international beers. And it is on a piece of 32 count ale, which actually that's a picture of this plus fabric that's it's part of their usual roundup now of fabrics that they sell, but this fabric was first created for this pattern. But it is a fabric you can get now for anything. So I've stitched 14. So that's what, 85 left? Yeah, if it's not fuzzy math. So I've still got 85 bottles to do. I'm having fun with this one. If I just sat down and put time into it, I could finish. See, it's Monday. I could probably have that second row finished by the end of the week. The only reason this doesn't have more done on it is because I've gotten distracted by other things, but it's fun. The colors are fun. It's fun when you see a beer that you recognize, like the Heineken up there, or the Blue Moon, or, you know, something that you recognize, you see it comes to life. There is a Moose Drool beer in here somewhere, which, talking about my dad and his work, he used to have to go to Missoula, Montana on customer complaint calls sometimes, and he said Moose Drool was the strangest beer he had ever tried because it was thick and dark and had chunks in it. Sounds like kind of a jacked up version of a Guinness, but more like a stout than a beer. But yeah, so I have stories of him talking about trying Moose Drool beer in Missoula, Montana, and not liking it very much, but there is a Moose Drool beer in there. So yes, clearly the most appropriate project bag project combo I have. Well, not the only one, but one of the most appropriate. I had showed you my JBW Designs, the Valentine's sampler, or the Valentine letters. This was the one that started my interest in JBW Designs. This is the Patriotic ABCs. So, of course, anything patriotic, I'm there. This was the first one. I do have the Seaside ABCs, and I am currently also stitching ABCs and Christmas trees. The only one I don't have is the Great Pumpkin ABCs. I might stitch that one because I'm really becoming a fan of the color orange. However, I'm not a huge fan of fall-related things, so I don't know if I'll do that one to finish out the series. But I am stitching this on a piece of 32 count Mars Dust hand-dyed by Rolanda. And she usually doesn't, it's an even weave. She sells on Etsy and she usually doesn't name her fabrics, but this one she did. And it's just another long strip like the other one. And I don't have a whole lot left to do. When I get it finished, I'll have to put French knots for the valves on the bugle and for the watermelon seeds, but there won't be much else like backstitch or anything to do. So I'm really almost, I'd say I'm good 2/3 of the way through. Just need to sit down, and I might do this one on Inauguration Day. I'm not watching the inaugural, but I plan to do nothing but stitch on patriotic stuff. So, but that was the first JBW Designs one that I started. And let's see what else we got here. I don't know if this is the one I think it is. It's probably not. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to do that one. I may change it up and do a different piece for my goddaughter. Do something next year for her, because she'll be 5 years old next year. Let's see here. I think I'll pull out these first, because these are just one per bag at this point. This was last year's bag of the month for March from Garon Toten Bags. I just love it. Everything about it. Perfect fabric. I don't know where Ronnie finds his fabrics, but he is spot on every single freaking time. Wherever he sources his fabrics for these bags, I mean, look at the inside liner. Ooh, Celtic knots and shamrocks. This was probably one of my favorites besides the patriotic ones. Okie dokie. This actually holds two. All right. Well, I don't know where I found this first one I'm going to show you. I might have seen it. Oh, I hope that's not going to pick up on my new microphone. If you hear a vacuum, it's the maintenance staff vacuuming the hallway out there. I mean, it needed it, but of course, of all times to actually do it. So anyway, where was I? I must have seen this on someone's Flosstube or something. I can't remember where I saw Teresa Kogut's patterns first, but she's actually a graphic artist who became a cross-stitch designer because she went to a needlework show or something with a friend of hers, and her friend was like, you know, you could convert your paintings into needle points or cross stitch, and so now she has a thriving cross stitch and punch needle embroidery business, as well as her paintings. You can always kind of tell a Teresa Kogut when you see Teresa Kogut angel when you see it. There's just something very specific about the way she paints that, you know, it's her stamp. You can tell it's her work. So this one's called Pray. Isn't she lovely? She's just so serene and peaceful. And there's something very antique-y about the colors that I love. So I am stitching this on a piece of, it's called Midnight Ocean Storm. Yeah, y'all are going to be able to hear that now with this new jacked up microphone I've got. I apologize. I wouldn't have started filming if I had known they were going to be vacuuming out there. Oh, anyway, it's a 32 count piece of fabric, which was from the March 2019 Fabric of the Month by Hand Dyed Happiness, called Midnight Ocean Storm. And I've just got part of her halo and part of her wing so far. But I liked this because it made me think of the heavens and clouds and stuff. So she's going to be... I just like the colors. There's a lot of... And I started this on February 3rd of last year. This was one of my copious starts in 2020. And this one is one I also started in... When did I start this? February of last year. This is the Stony Creek Stitching to the Music pattern book. And I am stitching this one for my sister. I'm probably going to stitch all the words and music notes around it and just leave off "It's All Good" at the bottom, because that's kind of silly to me. But what I love most about this pattern, besides the atypical color palette, because I usually use brighter colors and things that really kind of stand out more in specialty floss and stuff, is the muted palette. But I also like that the word music is formed by the negative space. You stitch all the stuff around it. So I picked an 18 count piece of Demoiselle from Picture This Plus that was in my stash, because with the negative space making the word, I didn't want there to be too much, you know, I didn't want the color of the fabric to take away from the shape of the letters, if that makes sense. I don't think it does. But, so I wanted something, and Demoiselle barely has any color to it. It's very, very pale pink and very, very pale blue. So this would be nice to stitch a birth sampler or something on if you didn't want to go into all the gendered, oops, am I holding that right side up or upside down? If you didn't want to go into the gendered baby colors. Yep, I was holding it upside down. So here is what I've gotten done so far, and you can see how the treble clef for the S, it comes out of the colors. So this one will be for my sister. So in the past couple of years, she's gotten back into playing her saxophone and gotten back into music, and there's a couple of jazz bands that she supports in Richmond that she really enjoys going to their concerts, or she did before COVID hit. So that one will be for my sister. Thank God the vacuuming is done. Good Lord, it figures that with the new microphone I would start talking to you when the lady's outside vacuuming. This is my girl. This is Queenie. This is my girl. This is Queen of Freedom. I've showed her before in previous videos, the Mirabilia. I've also got Lady of the Flag, which was, I mean, I'm so thankful I stashed that one after 9/11 because it was Nora Corbett's tribute to the fallen victims of 9/11. And I bought it, and at that point I hadn't been stitching long enough to step that far outside my comfort zone and use linen and Krynic and stuff like that. But I said, you know, someday I will stitch her. And it's a good thing I did because she went out of print years ago. And about maybe 4 or 5 years ago, Nora Corbett re-released a limited run, you know, a reprint. But that wasn't going to be forever either. So if you have it, you're lucky. I also bought Lady Justice last year, which I was so tempted to start, but I didn't. But I eventually plan to have Queen of Freedom, Lady of the Flag, and Lady Justice all together, like in a, you know, together on my wall somewhere. And I'm using Fabric Flare 32 count preamble fabric. And since I last showed her to you, I finally finished the red stripe. This red stripe here needed to be done. Now the white stripes on either side of the red one are the ones that I'm going to be working on next, you know, just fill in stitch. And then I'm working on the ruffle, the bottom ruffle of the flag. So I'm literally down here. That's the red stripe that I finished. This one is the red stripe that I finished. I've got the 2 white ones, and then I'm working on the billowy part of the flag down here. I actually decided, I know a lot of people like Petite Treasure Braid a lot better than Krynic, and I haven't stitched a lot with metallic threads anyway, but I decided to try the Petite Treasure Braid, and it is so much easier to work with. So yes, anything you've heard about substituting Petite Treasure Braid for Krynic, do it. It will save your sanity. I did stitch a piece years ago for my mother-in-law that used a lot of Krynic, and it wasn't easy. It was a dragon. She was the lead secretary for the Fairfax Villa Dragons Elementary School. And the cross stitch actually stayed at the elementary school after she retired because the kids begged her not to take their dragon with her. But that had a lot of Krynic. It was a Jennifer Aikman Smith. I believe it was when she ran Dragon Dreams, but that's been years ago. She hasn't designed in years. So, yeah, so I think I agree with everyone that Petite Treasure Braid's easier to use, and it comes in a wider variety of colors that you can find easily at 1-2-3 Stitch. Okay, this one I don't have. This is another, I started this on June 29th of last year, and I can't show you directly, but somebody, I want to say it was Niecy Lynn, did this, and I thought it was a genius way to show a pattern without showing a pattern when you don't have a cover sheet. I don't know if y'all can see it, but there's this massive red and blue tree and then a lamppost with a flag on it and a house. And this is called Leafy Lane, and it's by Stone Street Stitchworks. They really gave a difficult name to their company, didn't they? Stone Street Stitchworks. And it's a little thing, actually. And that's what I've done of the tree. It's just DMC. It's just several colors of DMC floss. This, excuse me, this blue is, which one is the blue? 939. It's navy blue. It is close to being my perfect shade of bluish purple. There is one DMC, I think it's 791, that is more purple than blue. That is my favorite shade of DMC, but if I'm not stitching with Granny Annie, I love using blues like that. So that's a little one. I can have that finished this year. It's probably one that I should have finished last year. It just, you know, I started stitching all the patriotic things, and then, you know, before I knew it, I ended up with 43 WIPs. So, yeah, I probably should have slowed my roll last year, but I didn't. Now, this is my other Karen Kluba Rosewood Manor that I'm working on. I bought this and I kitted it up. I bought it with the fabric and the called for Valdani threads, which are Romanian silk. I can't say why I love geometric stitching as much as I do, except that I think if I'm sitting somewhere where I start doodling, I'm always doodling shapes and straight lines and arrows and things like that. That's kind of my theme, I guess, in my head when I doodle. So I've always been drawn to geometric shapes, I guess, but this is the Quaker Diamonds, and I absolutely love it. Between the colors and the shapes, this one I knew I needed to do, and I tried so hard not to start it. Of course, failed miserably, but that's... like I said, previous video, it's a good thing I lack willpower and cross-stitching only. I started this on May 13th of last year with called for fabric and floss. Let me just see if I can pull the floss out here just to show you. I did lose a ball of this under the couch. I think it rolled under the couch at one point. So I had to purchase a ball on Etsy, but it's easy to find Valdani. I think because people like Karen Kluba have designed patterns specifically for the Valdani floss. The only real difference with using this floss as opposed to a DMC is a DMC is a 6-stranded cotton, so you pull apart the strands and you double over one strand and use it. But the Valdani, as I will show you here in a minute, is one strand, so you just pull one thread. See, this is just one strand. Whereas DMC, as I've got it here, is a 6-stranded cotton. I'll show you this because I left Valentine ABCs. You can see here that this has 6. Well, I don't know that you can see it that well on the webcam, but what you do with the DMC is you separate out the floss and you just take one strand and double it over on itself. If you're stitching 2 strands. Some people stitch 1 strand over 2 or whatever if they're using a really fine count fabric. But that's how you would use a DMC, and as you can see, this is completely different. This has no strand. This is just one thread. So you just take, you know, a length, and instead of doubling it over on itself, all you do is, the way I do it is, I also do this when I'm blending thread colors. Cut a length of thread, keep it kind of short. Then as you pull the thread through to make your first stitch, you just hold the tail on the back and then you stitch over the tail. Otherwise, I double it over and I do the loop method where I run my needle through the loop on the back to anchor it. You never want to notch your thread because that'll make the back lumpy and it'll make it hard for your framer to make it look good in a frame. But these colors are very antique. They're very antique, very sampler-esque, I would say. You know, like almost like a reproduction sampler, although it isn't. This is her original design. Now there is some over one stitching, which I've only done over one stitching once before, and that was on the piece that I did for Stephanie, and it was a learning curve, because if you want me to, leave in the comments below, and I will next time I do a video, show you a drawing of what I mean by stitching over two on linen. But I had never stitched over one, which is very small. That's all it is it's fiddly. When you're stitching on linen, you normally stitch over two threads, but sometimes if you're doing a very small detail, like on the one I did for Stephanie, the penguin, the eye of the penguin was over one. It gives detail. It gives a certain level of detail to a piece. But yeah, just leave in the comments if you want me to I can do a diagram to show you the difference. Stitching over two on linen is the same as stitching over one on Aida, which I know probably sounds Greek to some of you if you're watching and you're not stitchers. So let me know if you want me to explain it, and I will in my next video. But, I mean, look at these colors, if I can hold them up without throwing them all over the place. It's just really nice. It's Romanian overdyed silk thread. I believe this color pack was made specifically for her pattern. But you can buy Valdani floss in skeins. I believe you can buy it through 123 Stitch. But it really is beautiful. So I never actually showed you the piece, did I? I'm running my mouth about everything else. So this is the called for Picture This Plus 32 count mellow, which is kind of a yellowish brown, which doesn't sound very pretty, but it is. And there's what I've done so far. Now see those little tiny lowercase letters? That is stitching over one. So it's very tiny and fiddly, and I don't think I would like to do a lot of over one, but those little lowercase letters, it's fine to do it. The thing that I love the most is if you look at the outer diamond on this one, say, it looks like it's done in several different colors. That's just one Valdani thread. It's that variegated. The subtlety is that nice that it looks like you've used all kinds of different colors, but you haven't really. This diamond was difficult. I don't know why, but doing circles to make a diamond was kind of a pain in the ass. You're supposed to put the year you finish it in the middle of that, so probably next year. There is a mistake. There is something slightly off, but I'm not going to worry about it because once I established this motif, I started counting everything off this motif, working my way down. So if I was to find where I made the mistake, I'd probably have to rip out way too much. And, you know, the way I feel about mistakes is if you can leave it in and fudge it, do it. Don't drive yourself batshit crazy trying to fix mistakes, you know? Just go with the flow. Just let it, you know. I mean, now clearly on the diamonds, you can't. On these symmetrical diamonds, you can't not fix a mistake. But if it's something that you don't have to fix, don't drive yourself crazy trying to fix it. Who the hell's gonna know? Unless you're giving a piece to someone that they've stitched before and they know, and you made a big enough whopper of a mistake that they can see it, then who's gonna know? And even if somebody could see it, they'd be kind of a jerk to point it out to you, wouldn't they? So yeah, don't sweat the mistakes in cross stitch. You don't have to be perfect. I kind of like the old adage that is about the Amish, who are, of course, very famous for their absolutely freaking gorgeous hand-sewn quilts. I don't know if it's true or not, but I've always heard that the Amish will purposely stitch mistakes into their quilts because their focus on their faith tells them that God's the only perfect being. So they stitch mistakes into their pieces to remind themselves to stay humble because God's the only perfect being. Don't know if that's true, but that's what I've heard and I like it. Okay, now this one is one that I bought from the absolutely gorgeous and amazing McKenna, also known as Stitching in Sequins. She's my little sister out there in Arizona, that's for sure. which reminds me, I need to write her, send her a letter because I didn't get a Christmas card in the mail to her. This one I thought was older than it was. This one was actually from 2010. It's a French pattern called Made with Love, and it's very sampler-esque. Of course, I mentioned in my previous video about being obsessed with stitching hearts. So I decided at the last minute I was going to put this into my No New Starts 2021. This fabric, let me see, what fabric is this? Did I write it on the pattern? I think I might have. I started this on September 7th of last year. It's 32 count Jazz Lugana, and it's the Karen Water Lily Silk in the flame color. And I've just been working on stitching the two little people that are up top of the heart. So it's not a lot to look at now. It's basically the woman's skirt and the woman's body and the man's body. So there's not a lot to look at there, you know, for much to see, but that is going to be the two people, and then they're the apex of the heart, and the heart will come around them. Of course, stitching this for me and my sweetie. I love to stitch things for us that reflect our love. So that was one that I started. Very pretty little piece. It's different too. It's got like hearts and birds and cats and a house and all kinds of things, all kinds of birds and hearts and letters. So it's kind of a unique little sampler. So I'm glad I bought that from 1884 Stitchery, McKenna's online shop. So we're coming down to the end of it. This is good because I didn't want to take but so long. This one I bought from Garon Stitchery. Gary and Ronnie made me do it. I'm not taking any responsibility for this one, but yoga, until the pandemic, yoga was something that I tried to incorporate. I had been doing yoga for 5 years, and I tried to incorporate it into every week. It was great, especially when I was working a very stressful job, to be able to go to yoga after I got off work. This is a Nora Corbett that was actually, it came out last year. It's part of her new Pond Pixies collection, which it's lotus. So it's a little yoga fairy in the lotus position holding lotus blossoms in her hands. And I love the colors, and I have to say the beads are going to be so freaking phenomenal. I don't know if the light's going to reflect on that so you can't see it, but there's actually some size 6 glass beads. Usually I've only ever stitched with seed beads that are real little, but there's size 6 blue and white beads, which are much bigger, so that should be interesting. But there's teal and pink and gold and I'd call it like a periwinkle blue. So the beads themselves drew me to it, and of course the colors. And my beading threads in there. I'll do the beading last because I don't like to do beading as I go and then it gets caught in the hoop. So I haven't done a whole lot with this, but I've gotten her bodice, like her corset and her skirt started. And the colors are just phenomenal. This is a piece of Crossed Wing Collection fabric. I don't remember if it had a name. I didn't write it down, but it was just some that I had in my stash. And it's a pale pink and pale green, which I thought complemented the colors of this particular pattern because it's all teals. And now I see where the bigger beads go. They're around the bottom of the water, so that makes sense because you couldn't fit those in on her bodice or anything. She does have beads on the bodice of her corset, and then I think the lotus blossoms she has in either hand are beaded. She's a pretty little girl. She won't take that long. She's not that big. I was thinking about giving her to my yoga instructor, but then the yoga instructor I was going to give her to bought the studio in East Hampton, so my Kate left, so I don't know who I'll give it to. Or if I'll just keep it for myself. This is one of my older WIPs. This one I have been working on since 2016. And this one is reflective of my love of vintage robots. Not really sure where that came from, but I just adore vintage robots. But this came from the World of Cross Stitching magazine. It was volume 224, I believe. I wrote it down here. Let me see. It was World of Cross Stitch volume 224. I'm stitching it over to on 32 count country mocha casual linen, purchased at Salty Yarns, Ocean City, Maryland in July 2015. And I'm using all the call for DMCs. I stalked the ever-loving hell out of my Barnes & Noble because I bought the previous edition of the World of Cross Stitch, and they always give a little preview in the back of upcoming patterns, and they previewed this one, and since it's a British magazine, I had to stalk the ever-loving hell out of Barnes & Noble to make sure I got it, but I finally did, and I started it a while ago, like I said, 2016. This is the original country mocha. There is no more, I don't think this fabric's being made anymore. There's a reproduction of vintage country mocha that is done by the same company, but I think this was the original country mocha that they don't make anymore. I know a lot of sampler stitchers use vintage country mocha because it's very neutral. This technically I think would be for like a child's room because of all the primary colors, but I'm stitching it for myself, so I got a couple of little robots stitched. It's so cute. I love vintage robots. Don't ask me where I got that from. I just love vintage robots, so that was a no-brainer when I saw that, and I was glad that I was able to just, like, every week I would go check at Barnes & Noble. It took about a month to get the magazine, because, of course, being British, it would take a while to get here. But I was really thrilled when that one came out. Now, this one, actually, I think there's a couple in here. Yeah, there's a couple in here. Okay, this one is just because I love dragons, as I mentioned in the previous video. I got a dragon themed stitchy box a couple of years ago, and I started this one on December 31st of 2019. This was a pattern that came in the stitchy box. It's the White Willow Tribal Dragon number 2. Yes, I spilled coffee all over it, but thankfully it went on the pattern and not the project. I am stitching this on an unnamed 32 count Lugana from Hand Dyed by Rolanda. And I am using Karen Waterlily's, what is it, Dragonfly? Yeah, Dinky Dyes Dragonfly. So you will see, given the color of the thread, why I call this guy Sunny. Because I am a child of the 80s, so teal and pink will always be Miami Vice for me. So, Sunny. So, yeah, there's Sunny so far. And this, if I were Rolanda and I had given this a name, I probably would have called it Neapolitan, because it reminds me of Neapolitan ice cream, the chocolate, strawberry, and vanilla all in the same carton. But there is some blue in it too. There's bluey gray in it too, but the predominant colors are brown and pink. So that's what I would have named the fabric, but she doesn't, like I've said, she doesn't usually name her fabric, so. But that's Sunny. He's going to get some work this year. Then, this is a piece I'm working on for a friend of mine who has a dachshund. I was on the White Willow stitching. It was before I started Sunny. I do have a White Willow stitching tribal football helmet that I plan to stitch for my husband when he retires from UMass football. Which, if all that crap that Biden plans to put through with the NCAA and all the stuff he's going to do for college football happens, it might be sooner than we want it to be. But anyway, so I think. So the tribal rooster that I did that's in my kitchen. That was white willow. I have yet to stitch the tribal football helmet because I'm still looking for the perfect fabric and thread combo. I want to do it on a gray fabric with maroon thread because gray and maroon are two of the three of our school colors, the other being white. So, but I was futzing around on the White Willow Stitching website at one point, and I found this. I started it last February in 2020 on 32 count fabric flare, which I believe, is this the melted crayon? This might be the melted crayon colorway, but it's the black and tan long-haired dachshund. And this is all I've gotten done of him. And it's not the fabric, it's just tedious stitching, nothing but black. But there's actually a lot more colors to this than I realized there would be. But you can see it's part of his mouth and his nose, so I do need to get back to that. And then the final one in this bag is my final Long Dog sampler. I forgot that I actually had 4 of them. Now this one I did a color conversion on because I just wanted to try to see if I could do a color conversion. So I changed it from the called for DMC to Weeks Dye Works and Gentle Arts sampler threads, and I think I've got a pretty good bead on it. This is the Long Dog Samplers Rain Dance, and it's going to be 15 by 20 with 2-inch borders. And I'm stitching it on a 32 count, or no, excuse me. I started this, this was my snow day stitch. 18 count toasted almond fabric from Hand Dyed by Stephanie. And I started this on December 1st, 2019, which was the day we got back from going to the play in New York and meeting Stephanie and, you know, all that excitement. We hadn't planned on staying in New York anyway to do sightseeing that Sunday because Bill thought he had a team meeting that he needed to get back for. But it turned out there was a blizzard warning. So we left New York earlier than we had planned to. And we got home, got the rental car turned in, went to the grocery store. I had unloaded the car and we're unpacking the groceries when the snow started. And in 12 hours, we got 14 inches of snow. So it was a good thing we left New York when we did. But this one was the one that I started the day after we got back, or the day we got back after meeting Stephanie. So this is what I've gotten done so far. I think the color conversions are going to be fine. I mean, I have the DMC color card, so I just kind of went through my specialty flosses and picked out ones that I had that were very, very close to the DMC. So what my plan of attack is, if you look at this pattern, it's got a lot of fill stitch of color. So like what I've already stitched is this little bird here and the starburst, and I'm stitching the tail of this big guy. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to stitch the black first and then fill in the colors. And I think that should work. That should make it flow pretty easily. So right now that's what I've got. I'm liking the fabric. I wanted something neutral because this is a pretty dramatic pattern anyway. So, and I picked it because I've always been drawn to Southwestern native iconography for whatever reason. Part of it is because I'm a flute player. So us flute players know about Kokopelli. He is the Hopi Indian god of fertility and music, and he's portrayed as a flute player. So yeah, since ancient times, music and sex have gone together. Barry White was nothing new, gotta say. I mean, Kokopelli is the native version of Barry White, but as a flute player, I recognize him, and he's probably my native spirit guide, I guess, if I had one. And I find the stories behind the gods fascinating, just like I do with ancient Greek and ancient Egyptian mythology. And my husband is part native, not this region. He is as close as his dad has ever been able to trace the ancestry because it goes through his dad's mother's line of the family. As close as they've come to figure out, it was the Iroquois Confederation, but that was like 6 groups, 6 different tribes that worked together They came together, the agrarian tribes in like Western Virginia and up into Pennsylvania and those tribes. So we've never actually really been able to pinpoint which specific tribe he would belong to. And he's only an eighth native anyway. He always tells me, well, I'm an eighth native, but I'm 7/8 white. So, I would never think of co-opting that culture because it's not mine to co-opt. But his great-grandmother on his dad's mother's side was full-blooded. She was a shaman's daughter. And, of course, it was the age-old story. His great-grandfather was a cavalry officer, and he met his great-grandmother because they had come upon the village that they lived in, and it was completely decimated, and she was one of the few survivors. And he offered to help her, and they ended up married. I didn't really know Bill's grandmother all that well. I met her in the fall of 94, and she passed away in the spring of 95. But she definitely had a burr in her saddle about the federal government. Let me just tell you, as Native Americans should, honestly, when you think about what our government did to them. Yeah, but she hated the government. She used to tell Bill's dad she was going to fill out her census with "F you, none of your effing business" and all this stuff, and he'd be like, "Mother, they will be able to find you. You have to make nice." But yeah, she was quite a spitfire, and I wish I had gotten to know her before, because she wasn't in the best of health when I met her, but I bet in her heyday she could give people hell, which I wish I'd had more of a chance to know Grandma Jenny, but I'm glad I did have the chance that I did have. So yeah, there is that sense of family history with Native American things. And yes, his grandmother was a fan of the Redskins, and she had no problem with them being called the Redskins. In case you were wondering. And yes, in case you were wondering, my husband is not a huge fan of calling it the Washington football team, but anyway. So this next piece, this was enablement, and it's the Inspired Needles' fault. I love watching the Inspired Needles videos. Nancy and her sister, and they've recently started doing like little videos of their friends who have been working on certain pieces, putting them into their videos. And of course, the Inspired Needle is a needle workshop, so they're always showing Nancy Roganella. She's always showing the latest things that have come to the store, the latest things she's stocking. She's letting you know that she gets certain fabrics in. I really enjoy watching their videos, but it's her fault that I started this one, because she had a customer come in to get this custom framed. And it actually came out last March at Nashville Market. Nashville Market is for retailers. It's not for the stitching public, but it's where the retailers go every year at the beginning of March to see what the designers have come up with for what the new releases for the coming year are going to be, so that they can place their orders and stock the new patterns. And this one actually came out last March, and I saw it on a bunch of people's videos talking about Nashville Market, but I was like, no, as much as I love it, as much as it's like everything perfect in stitching for me, I'm not going to do it. So then flash forward to last September, and did I say Nancy? No, I don't remember if that's the poor woman's name. Kathy Roganella. Why did I call her? Oh, her sister's name is Nancy. My apologies, Kathy. I'm so sorry. I was just like, no, that's totally not her name. It's her sister's name. Her sister is Nancy. She's Kathy. She runs the Inspired Needle. But she had a customer who had finished this, who brought it to her for framing, and she showed it. And when I saw the finished piece, I was done. Yeah. Sorry, Kathy. Not like Kathy Roganella's going to be watching my little weak video here, but still, apologies, ma'am. Little House Needleworks, Kringles Inc., Santa's Department Store. Could you not just die at how perfect this is? And it's stitched with, let me see, there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 DMC, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 classic colorwork specialty threads. Now, this is just so damn perfect. So I started in the middle, which is the clock in the middle of the building. I kitted it up. I kitted it up on Etsy, I think, and was able to get all of the threads except a couple that I was able to wrangle from other online shops. But this is as much as I've gotten done. This is the called for 30 count. What? But anyway, the little tagline says, "Welcome to Kringle's, an old-fashioned department store filled with holiday treats, toys, and the spirit of the season." And it's Little House Needleworks. And it came out last year at Market. I want to see... What was I? Oh, the fabric. It is stitched on 30 count Parisian gray, which comes from Access Commodities. I haven't stitched on 30 count before, but I stitch on 32. So this one's a little easier on the eyes than my usual stitching. So I've got that little part of that side of the wall and the clock tower that's in the center. So I'm almost able to scooch over and stitch the rest of the wall, but it's everything, and I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to get into another really, really big piece because I knew with all the ones that I had that are going to take forever, I didn't need another really big piece. And this one is the stitch count. The design itself is 12 by 15. The stitch count's 193 by 232. So this is the right size fabric to leave 2-inch borders, but it's going to be massive. It's going to be 16 by 19 by the time I get it framed. I didn't really, but I couldn't, that was like my one weakness. That was my one, oh crap, why did I do this? So, but we're down to the last few. These are for the dear children of a very beloved friend of mine who's out in New Mexico. The one that I'm doing the crooked crown one for that I showed in the first video. Yeah, these, and I'm going to put a specialty thread in every single one. Let me see, do I not have... All right, so for young Miss Catherine, who's the youngest, she's 4, I just need to get on the schneid and stitch this one because there's not a whole lot of stitching to it. It's really, for a Karen Kluba, there's not a whole lot of stitching to this. It's 4 colors, and it's a button pack. And so it's only 54 by 96 stitches. So it's a little thing. It's the You Are a Star. So because I'm using a specialty thread in every kid's piece, the specialty thread I'm using for this one is a Jody Redesigns variegated to stitch the You Are a Star. And I'm stitching this one on an 18 count piece of, did I write it down? Heartland by Picture This Plus, which is a nice neutral. And I've got that little bit done. I can't remember which Jody Redesigns. Did I write it down? What color is that I used for the... Oh, Purple Rain. And it's kind of a variegated purple and blue and gray. Like I said, I've got a lot of purple specialty flaws. But I am a purple kind of girl. It's my favorite. It's my mom's birthstone, the amethyst. And it's just my favorite color. But I also love emerald green. And I love orange. I actually really like the November birthstone. It's that yellowy, kind of yellowy orange. It's not a color I could wear, but I love those colors. So the next, oh, and this is the button pack. There's, I think, 32 separate star. Well, let me take that out of the package because they're never going to see that. Not with the lights in here. You're not even going to see it now, but it's 32 separate little star buttons, and you use those for the petals of the flowers. So all you really stitch on that one is you back stitch the stems, and you stitch the words "You are a star." So that one won't take any time to finish. So the oldest granddaughter, her nickname is Grim. And I can't, let me see if I can show you this through the page. This is the Witchy Stitcher Killing It, which is a pattern from 2018. It's small, it's 61 by 69, and it's about a 4 by 5 when you finish it. I started this on November 15th of last year. I'm stitching it with black and white and Mrs. Sada's Sienna, which is a reddish orange, on 18 count Monster Mash from Picture This Plus. And this is a fabric, I don't know why the hell I had it in my stash, but I'm glad I did. I don't know if y'all can see through there, but it's the Grim Reaper. It says Killing It, and then what I'm stitching with the Mrs. Sada's is all the tombstones, because I'm going to try to make it look kind of like Hellfire and the moon. And it says Killing It, and this would be perfect for her because her nickname is Grim, and she actually... Poor Candace, I bet she was absolutely mortified. Not too long ago, they went to church, and one of the older ladies was asking Grim, well, what's your name? And she said, I'm the Grim Reaper, and it's the end of days. And I was like, oh my God, I would have died if that had been my child. She's 10 years old. She should know better. And Candace was like, well, I almost just passed out right there from embarrassment. But the nice thing is that was one of the snobby old farts in the church, and she hasn't spoken to us since. So it wasn't necessarily a bad thing. But this is what I've gotten done. Just got to fill in the face and finish the Reaper. And like I said, I have no clue why I had Monster Mash in my stash, but it's the perfect kind of like acid green. And then I'm going to use the Sienna. I think I've got that in here. I can show you. Let me see. Yeah, here it is. It's like brown and orange and yellow and kind of Hellfire and Damnation kind of color. So, yeah, so... That's her precocious oldest granddaughter. Then she has twin grandsons who are 12. And this one I kind of thought, I don't know. I thought when I started stitching this that this might be too young for Harley. But it's cute though. It's absolutely adorable. I love the horse and the cactus. And it says, giddy up horse, it's time to ride into the old west countryside where dreams are made and I can be a cowboy living wild and free. And it's called Cowboy Dreams, and it's by Country Cottage Needleworks. And the specialty thread I'm using in this one is for the rope border. I am using Karen Water Lily silk in the sable color. And it's funny because somebody mentioned this to me. This is an 18, what am I stitching this on? It's 18 count Picture This Plus Ada, but I don't know what the color of the fabric. Oh, it's Haunted, which is a grayish slate blue. And I started this and I took a picture of it and somebody on Facebook said, oh, that looks like a cow. They're not entirely wrong so far, are they? But that is the specialty floss for the... Oh, you know what? I'm showing you the back. Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. No wonder that looked weird. Yeah. I mean, it does kind of look like a cow, doesn't it? Sort of. Yeah. Anyway. So, I was thinking it might be a little young, but I don't know. It's a sweet sentiment. So, there's that one. And then for Rooster, there's a very personal reason, which is very private, that I'm not going to discuss why I'm stitching cowboy boots for him, but it's the perfect one for him. And for the specialty thread, there's horseshoes and stars. I've got some Petite Treasure braid that I'm going to use for the silver and the gold for the stars. And this I'm stitching on 14 count Picture This Plus Harmony, and I started it November 27th. And I chose Harmony because it kind of reminds me of like the dust and sand of, kind of like the colors I associate with the desert Southwest. I don't know. I've never been to New Mexico. I need to rectify that situation and go visit them as soon as I can get my ass on a plane. I'm not staying here. I plan to go to New Mexico, I plan to go to Orlando, and I plan to go to Richmond. So, anywho, that's just part of the boot. And that's the boot on the left, the right-hand side of the boot on the left. So it's this part coming down toward the toe of the boot. So those are, with the exception of one, which I've been working on today, and I plan to do a separate video for. Those are my works in progress and my no new starts. If I can make it to December 13th without having busted up my challenge, then I will be very proud of myself. So far, I'm not tempted to start anything new because I think about, Chica, you've got 43 projects you're working on already. What the hell's your problem? Why do you need anything else? And then I'm like, yeah, okay, good point. But given the shit show that 2020 was and the shitstorm that seems to be unleashing on 2021, I will probably have plenty of time to stitch. Like I said, I don't foresee a lot of finishes in my future, but I do see a few, and I'm just very thankful that my mother taught me how to cross stitch. It's gotten me through a lot in the past year, and it's still getting me through things right now in 2021. So for all you stitchers out there, I wish you happy stitching and a happy life. And all my other non-stitchy peeps, love you so much. Hope everything is going well for you. And if it isn't, know you've got my love and support. And I wish you a happy life as well. And I will talk to you soon. Bye.